Welcome everyone. We're going to give it a minute to let everyone into the webinar today. Welcome. My name is Noemi Guevara and I am the Director of Alumni Engagement here at Cal State Long Beach. Thank you so much for joining us today. Before we start our session, just want to let you know that this is being recorded and it will live on our website at csulb.edu/alumni. Also, during today's webinar, we encourage you to use our Q&A box found below to help us make sure that all questions get answered. And now I'd like to introduce one of our moderators for the chat today. Lucia Cos is a graduate of 1975 from the College of Liberal Arts with a degree in Spanish, and she was recognized as a distinguished alumna in 2005 and currently serves as part of our CSUB Alumni Council board member. We ran into some technical difficulties, but you won't be able to see Lucia, but you will be able to hear her. And now I'd like to introduce Lucia Cos. Lucia?
Great, thank you, Noemi. Erin Ramachandran, I'm sorry, I practiced this before. Ramachandran, right? Ramachandran is a proud alum and holding a master's degree in healthcare administration from Long Beach State. She is a certified mental health first aid instructor and two-time award-winning author for her book, Mental Health Strong. She has worked for over 13 years at one of the largest nonprofit health plans in the United States and currently holds the role of mental health and wellness program director. Together with her husband, they started Mental Health Strong, a nonprofit to bring hope, resources, and support to marriages with mental health and addiction challenges. Personally, Erin enjoys traveling, swimming, mentoring, and speaking on matters pertaining to mental health, marriage, and faith. World Mental Health Day just took place last week, so this chat is very fitting. Joining us today to lead our 49er industry chat, please welcome Erin Ramachandran.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be here, and I'll go ahead and start the slides here. All right, can everybody see this? Awesome. Well, it's so good to be here. Whether you're an alumni, whether you're a student or faculty, I want to welcome you to talk about just an important topic that's affecting all of us with not only pre the pandemic, but even during the pandemic, and it will for the future. As she said, my name is Erin Ramachandran and excited to be here and just to talk about mental health strong in you and your relationships. And then also at the end, I'll talk about the top 10 career tips that have worked for me as I've been on this journey to now merge my professional career and my passion together into one area. And I call it ikigai, or I don't call it that. It's an industry term from the Japanese culture where it's really about a reason for being. And so I really want to encourage you on your journey, wherever you are, to think about, what's unique about you? What maybe pain have you had, and how can you apply that into your career and how you give back to society? So what we'll talk about today, I'll have a quick little icebreaker for us because I do want to have this be interactive. If there's any questions that you have, go ahead and hold those for the end. We'll talk about some statistics of mental health. Obviously, that's a topic that's becoming more and more at the top of the conversation. So we'll talk about that. I'll share a little bit of my story and the steps that I've learned to be mental health strong and how you could apply those with maybe a loved one that you're walking alongside. And then we'll end with the top 10 career success tips and ikigai, and then leave you with some resources. Before I jump into it, I do need to say that I am representing Mental Health Strong today and not Kaiser Permanente. I do work at Kaiser Permanente, but today I'm talking on behalf of Mental Health Strong and not Kaiser Permanente. So I want you to think about how many of you have a loved one, whether it be a brother or sister, a parent, a spouse, maybe even a child that has a mental health or addiction challenge. So if you could just think about that, I'm sure many of us have it. If you want to put something in the chat, you can say, yes, I have someone that I love that has a mental health or addiction challenge. And then another thing you can maybe put in the chat is, what kind of challenge do you face in this type of situation when you have a loved one with a mental health or addiction challenge?
Right. And as if you ask questions that are related, this is Lucia. You see, have questions that are related to the conversation. I will make sure she gets those. Those are asked.
Wonderful. I would assume if we were standing in a room or even on the chat that many of us are impacted where our loved ones will have a mental health or addiction challenge or will be impacted personally. Pre-pandemic, you may or may not have known this, but 1 in 5 Americans are diagnosed with a mental health condition every year. And when I say mental health, generally I am speaking about a mental health condition, anxiety, depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, bipolar, it can be panic disorder, or an addiction like a substance use, a drug condition, or substance use with alcohol. So 1 in 5 of us pre-pandemic would be diagnosed every year. And then when we talk about suicides, suicide pre-pandemic was the second leading cause of death for the ages of 10 to 34, and the fourth leading cause of death for ages 35 to 54. This is pre-pandemic, right? Pretty shocking. And then post-pandemic, we've got 40% of the US adults reported struggling with mental health and substance use. 11% are struggling with suicidal thoughts. 56% of Americans said they felt stressed. And I'm sure many of you are feeling that. Obviously, you've had to change the way you work, the way you've gone to school, the way you interact differently. And more people are consuming substances in ways to cope.
So, Erin, this is Lucia. Do you think that this might also be the reason you have people that are going a little crazy when they're out and they have no control over what they can or cannot do?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I would say, first of all, as someone who's trying to help the mental health community, we're really trying to get away from the word crazy. So I would say that that is it's okay. No, it's a term that comes up, but it is something that we're trying to change in the industry. So I would say that, someone who's struggling, let's say, sometimes people use that word with someone who's struggling with maybe psychosis, which is where someone may not be thinking straight, right? Might be saying things, might be seeing things. And yes, this pandemic might have where that might happen. Also, psychosis can happen if someone hasn't slept for 48 hours or takes the substance. It can affect the brain chemistry. So there's a lot of different things that can cause psychosis. Some of them can be things that someone chooses. It can also be something that, someone has a diagnosis that, they didn't think that they were going to have. So great question. But I mean, the thing we would say is that mental health is impacting us all, and it will continue to impact us. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think about physical illness, right? I love to compare physical illness with mental illness. Physical illness is something that affects all of us too. How many of us know someone who struggles with cancer or diabetes, right? Those are illnesses of the body. And when we talk about mental health, we want to talk about and destigmatize that it's something wrong with the person, but really think about it as a brain disorder. So just like we talk about heart disease is an illness of the heart, a mental illness, right, is where your brain's not working the way it used to. And in many situations, there's recovery, and you can manage and have a very fulfilling life.
So a question did come up that
Sure.
that sometimes the family never has talked about what's going on, the mental health issue, and it's hard to deal with the person that is having with it if they're not if they're not able to know how to have that discussion.
Absolutely. There's a great resource called findyourwords.org, and I'd recommend going there. It gives you some specific phrases that you can say to someone that's struggling. And you're right, opening up those conversations, but it can even start with something simple of, I learned something today on this webinar. And I learned that just like we talk about flu or a physical illness like diabetes, I'm learning that there's also illnesses that can happen to the brain, and they're called mental health conditions. And I see some of the signs and symptoms in our family. My loved one, which I'll talk about, which is a great segue into a little bit of my story. My husband and I got married, and basically right into our marriage, something wasn't right. The person who was pursuing me and loved me through stress and trauma that happened right before our marriage ended up starting to spend more time cleaning in our home than he did with me. In the worst time of our lives, he was cleaning 12 to 16 hours a day. 12 to 16 hours a day. And you can imagine that someone who's cleaning that much or straightening, they weren't able to function of holding down a job or being able to have relationships or being able to laugh. And something just wasn't right. And both of us didn't know about mental health conditions. We had never had the conversation. My husband is from India, hence my last name. And it wasn't talked about in his culture or in my family. And so it actually took where in a year into our marriage, when just something wasn't right, I said to him, honey, I love you. I want to be married to you, but something's not right. I need you to go to the doctors, and you have 30 days to go so we can figure out what this is. And when he went to the doctors, he was diagnosed very quickly with obsessive compulsive disorder. And now over the next 12 years, we have been learning how for him to manage the condition and for me how to walk alongside him. And when we were learning this, we both have ups and downs. And a couple years into our marriage, when he was still learning how to deal with this, I was learning how to live with someone with this. And I went through two different extremes, some where I denied what was happening and the other where I was over functioning. And I'm embarrassed to say, but when I was going to Long Beach State, I was living in Sacramento, flying down every other week for the program. I was working full time. I ended up doing an internship. I was volunteering at our local church and mentoring someone. I was out of control trying to overfunction for the pain that was happening inside of me. And my body ended up burning out. I went to the doctors because my brain physically stopped working. I'm, an organized person who is able to think things and logically. And basically, if someone texted me, I felt overwhelmed. The doctor, when I saw the doctor and I was crying to her, I said, am I ever going to get my brain back? And she said, you will. I can tell that you're going to do the things to get well. And that was the start of my own journey, that I basically had a midlife crisis at age of 27. And since then, I've been able to learn steps and tools and resources to help me be able to function well, because I had my own things that I brought into the relationship. Just like with your loved ones, they're struggling to manage their condition, right? So like my husband has to manage his obsessive compulsive disorder, and later he was diagnosed with 4 other disorders. So he has to learn how to live with those. And I have to learn how to make sure that I'm not over functioning, that I'm loving well, but having boundaries, and learning that through this process. So I'll share with you the 8 steps that worked for me for walking alongside my loved one. And think about where you are with your relationship that you were thinking about in that icebreaker.
Erin, so,
Maybe steps can be for you. Yep.
and Erin, I just want to say that one of our listeners did confer, just as you were just started talking about your incident or your issue. about psychosis and hallucinations. And this person is a former mental health worker. And so I think that that's a great segue also into the what you're going into.
Absolutely. So after I burnt out, I needed to learn, how do I live in a more healthy way? And as I went on this journey, there were 8 steps that really I'd done, and I put them in the acronym of mental MH Strong to remember the 8 steps. So I want to share these here with you, and hopefully this will be able to help you with your loved one. Again, no matter if it's your spouse relationship or a parent-child relationship or a sibling or your child. So the first step is make the diagnosis clear. So the first thing is you need to understand, what is the condition that you're dealing with. The treatment for obsessive compulsive disorder is different than someone with depression. That's different than someone with schizophrenia. That's different than someone with a substance use disorder. So the idea is, just like in physical illness, right? If we have cancer, we need to do the cancer treatment, which is different than the diabetes treatment. So you want to make sure that you can get that diagnosis. It turns out a lot of times people, 50% of people don't get actually diagnosed. And I think that's related to stigma. But the more we're able to talk about physical illness and mental illness and not have stigma and just say they're both here, I think that will help us help our loved ones to know that they haven't done anything wrong. My husband hasn't done anything wrong. He is the most amazing man, and we love each other, and we have a beautiful marriage. And I wouldn't want to be married to anybody else but him. But we do have this challenge that we both are fighting together. Next, second step, H, help for you and then your loved one. I say help for you first. I can't walk alongside Keith if I'm not taking care of me. And I brought my own issues into the relationship. Every relationship has both people play a part. And so I had to work on the things that I need to work on, like anger and control and codependency. And codependency, a fancy word that you're trying to fix everyone. And so the idea is that I needed to learn how to keep myself healthy so that I could allow, walk alongside Keith where he could do the things that he needs to do to get well. So think about for yourself, help for you. Where are you right now? Are you anxious? Are you feeling depressed? Are you struggling? Get help for you, because we need to make sure that we're doing our work on ourselves. The third step, set some boundaries. When your loved one is struggling with addiction or a mental health condition that's, it could be depression or bipolar or OCD, etc. A lot of times they'll have times or seasons where they're not able to function. They may not be able to make it to the social obligation that you guys thought they would be able to, or maybe they're not able to work for a season. And this might be a daily challenge that you have to live with. So what do you do in order to set some boundaries? And let me make this real with a current situation that we actually struggle with every day. So for us, it's time. So my husband gets, he struggles with getting out of the house because his compulsions, obsessive compulsive disorders, you have some anxiety. And then to comfort the anxiety, you go to a compulsion. And so in our house, that's where a lot of the compulsions take place. And so for my husband, he struggles to get out on time. And let's say we have a party to go to, and we'll say, hey, we're going to leave at 6 to go. We have an agreement that if he's not ready at 6, I have the ability to leave without him. This took a while for us to get to. It's a boundary that we both agree to. I'm not punishing him. He's not holding me back. But it's really on, I value going to places on time. Time for me is respect. And for him, he wants to go too, but sometimes he can't make it. And you know what? He's got a car or an Uber that he can take in order to get to the social engagement when he's able to. So the idea with setting some boundaries is figuring out what is important to you, what are you willing and not willing to do, and then setting those things in place. Boundaries is something that it takes time to learn. There's a lot of resources to learn how to do boundaries well, to make sure they're not threats. You're not trying to control the other person, but really about boundaries that are healthy. The fourth step, take time for self-care. When you're walking alongside a loved one that's struggling, you need to take time for self-care. This means you've got to be filling up you, so that you can be your best version of yourself for them. This could be going out for a walk. This could be watching something funny. This could be hanging out with friends. So figuring out what makes you tick, and to fill you up. I remember once my husband was asking me to do something for him, and I was like, you know what? I really want to help you, but right now I am completely depleted. I'm going to do this thing for me. And when I get back, I'll be able to help you, because right now I have nothing else to give. That's healthy. Being able to say no in a nice way, but to say when you're going to be able to be with them. Remember, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what if they are not willing to accept that?
Well, we have to control our thoughts, feelings, emotions, and behaviors. And so that's what we can control. I can't control him, but I can control what I need to do to keep myself healthy. Yep. The fifth step, remember to grieve. I thought that grieving was only if someone died. I did not realize that you could grieve if there were a loss of expectation. So let me try this. When I got married, I didn't expect that right in when we first got married that we would not have a honeymoon season and that my spouse would be cleaning 12 to 16 hours a day and not functioning. I thought we were going to get married, live with your best friend, have all this fun time, and, probably a little bit unrealistic expectations, shaded by movies or different things. But the reality is there were some expectations that weren't met. I had to grieve that loss. I had to work through that. If I just ignored it, it would come out in different ways as anger or different things. So I had to go and grieve that pain of what I thought my marriage would be versus what it actually was. And that allowed me to get to the step of acceptance of where I am today and the choices that I was able to make it where I really love our marriage, and so does he. But I had to go through that. I had worked with a therapist for over a year, and her goal was to get me to cry every week. When I got done with that crying, I went to some workshop, and there I was crying again. And the lady said, I think you need to grieve. And I was like, I thought I was grieving for the last year. Like, there's more. And so I ended up going to this thing called the Spark of Life retreat. It was a free grief retreat, but it's based upon the grief recovery method. And that really helped me to get the additional grief out that I guess was in there. But the idea is you can grieve on a loss that may not be a death. Just like if someone maybe had an accident that was able to walk and now is not able to walk, they probably need to grieve how that impacts their life. So think of it in that way. I need to grieve that my loved one was different than what I thought it could be. Doesn't mean there's something wrong with him, but I need to grieve that expectation that was different. Huge step. Own the journey. So you want to own the journey, that there's ups, downs, ins, and outs. You want to be able to know that there's 2 steps forwards and 1 step back with your loved one. That's a part of it. And it's okay. When you're in the low, remember the highs. When you're in the highs, remember the lows. But remember, it's a journey. And we try to build in safety, humor, and peace into our home. Safety, humor, peace in our home. When we're not having safety, humor, and peace, something's wrong. We both laugh at the OCD together, and it's super funny. Do you know my husband actually has all of our VIN numbers memorized to our cars? It's pretty incredible. So there's a little bit of genius in there in his mind. Or if I forget something, I'm like, what is this? And he remembers. So there's beautiful things about it. And not again, expect relapses. Relapses are going to happen with a loved one with mental health or addiction challenge. So don't plan for it. Don't get scared by it. Just know it's going to happen. In substance use disorders, they say it takes 9 times of relapse in order to get well. I know someone with a bipolar disorder, they went to the hospital 7 times. In obsessive compulsive disorder, they say the brain is just like someone with addiction challenge. So it will take 9 times mostly to get into the health that they need. So the idea is that you want to expect the relapses and have a plan for them. Get a care team around you. Get a plan with your loved ones so you know what you're going to do when that happens. And the last step is G, get to the gift of mental health. So when you go through these steps, you can get to the point where you love your loved one. You love that it's okay that they have a condition and that you can see the good that can come out of it. If my husband didn't have this condition, our marriage wouldn't be as strong as it is today. We wouldn't have this now nonprofit that we're able to help others and fill a gap where there was a need, that there really wasn't any resources for marriages with mental health or addiction challenges. So you know what, in your life, think about your pain, think about the gaps that you're seeing in the world, and see where you can help and make a difference. I know you're on this journey of learning because you're at school and you're in the learning profession. So I encourage you, on the things that you're learning, figure out what works and to incorporate that. So again, the 8 steps: make the diagnosis clear. H, help for you and your loved one. S, set some boundaries. T, time for self-care. R, remember to grieve. O, own the journey. N, not again, expect relapses. And G, the gift of mental health. I define mental health strong as when you're living out the 8 steps, and when that relapse occurs that you've planned for with your loved one, you don't go down with them. You keep your side of the fence clean. I keep my side of the fence clean in how I respond and how I walk alongside. Now, that doesn't mean I'm perfect. I'm not at all. And I'm still learning. I struggle. I just struggle less. My husband struggles, but struggle less. But we're now together fighting the disorder together. Kind of like, think about with cancer. The loved one will be fighting the cancer, and the other loved one will be, how can I walk alongside you with the cancer? But together, they're fighting the cancer together. And that's what you want to do with a mental health or addiction challenge as well. We use the symbolism of the tree to talk about this different stages of a relationship, whether you're the struggles and trials that are at the roots, and then the growth that comes through the tree of working the steps, and then the vitality of the relationship and the fruit that comes from pain that brings beauty from it. Our journey, we've had 5 mental health conditions, 12 to 16 hours of rituals, 6 moves, 4 job losses, 1 major separation, burnout, inpatient hospital, over $100,000 in therapy. But you know what? The gift is we love one another. We love our marriage. We're celebrating 13 years of marriage this year, or next week. We have a purpose for helping marriages. We have deep relationship with God, friends that are like family to us. You know, we have 5 people that have given us keys to their house that at any time, if we need to crash there, that depth of relationship we wouldn't have if we didn't have this situation. We have 3 graduate degrees, new communication skills, humor in our relationship, and we traveled the world together and are excited about how God is using our pain to help others. Now, I shared with you our story and now our growth to mental health strong and running this nonprofit. And again, this is something we're passionate about on the side. But I also, when I was preparing for this with Cynthia, she's like, it would be really cool if you could share with people, how did you get there? How did you work through this career advancement to get to where you are? And what I want to share with you is it's a journey. And I didn't set out when I was doing over 10 years ago, the mental health or master's in healthcare administration. I thought I was just working towards, working in the continuing my career at Kaiser Permanente, which I am, but to just be in the insurance side of it. And I had no idea that I was going to be making the switch to mental health as these things started to roll out. I didn't know I was going to be writing a book. When I was in school and in high school, my teacher told me I wrote like a tossed salad. He said I would never equip to anything. And here yet, now I'm an author. And I'm not sharing that to say like I've arrived. I'm sharing that to say, don't let the things that people have said to you keep you from going the places you want to go. And so I want to share with you the top 10 tips that have worked for me over career advancements over my last 15 years of working in the healthcare industry. So the first thing is building relationships, obtain mentors, and lots of them. I have both personal mentors and career mentors. And you know what? Every couple of years, I get new ones. So you want to continue to build relationships and get people to give you great input. I find that solving problems proactively, when you see a gap, there's different types of people. You either see a gap and like say there's a gap, or you can do something about it and fix it. So the idea is look to solve problems proactively. Employers want those type of people working in with them. Move roles, continue to learn and grow, meet new people. It gives you a new perspective and it helps you to learn different spaces. Assume positive intent of others. You know, there's a lot of gossip that happens at different workplaces, and I would say stay out of it. Just assume good intent of others and don't get caught in it. It's not the way to grow your career. Kindness, prayer, and integrity counts. Kindness to the people around you, both above you and below you, and peers. Integrity, what you do, that what you do behind the scenes is the same as what you do at work and the same as what you're at home. That really matters. And for me, prayer. I ask God to bless my career. I ask God to bless the leaders ahead of me. I ask God to bless my team. And I believe he has done that. And so I can't, share about this without saying that is a part of my life. Meet people face to face if you can and be thankful. Obviously, in this time of COVID, that makes it difficult. But I will say in my career, what I would do is when I had a new relationship with somebody, I would go meet them in person. And then after that, the relationship would just blossom in a new way. So think about doing that and be thankful. Be resourceful, ask questions, speak up. Try not to multitask and be present and ask questions. That goes a long way. Engage your manager in your development and desires. Don't surprise them. Have them be a cheerleader for you. Know your strengths and implement them. At the end, I'll give you some resources that help you know your strengths. For me, Strength Finders was a key thing that helped me when I was in that burnout stage. I actually thought I was in the wrong role and I was feeling overwhelmed. But you know what? What it was is I didn't understand my strengths, and obviously I was over functioning. But one of them is when I learned those strengths, I was able to understand that my achiever strength and my strategic strength kind of are opposite spectrums. And I used to fear that I wasn't doing enough strategically because I couldn't see the day-to-day, but strategy is far and the day-to-day achievement. And so when I learned, if I have my 3-year plan and I'm doing these meetings, I'm working towards that goal, that really brought some peace in my career. So know your strengths and implement them. And the last thing is communicating your advancement desires to people around you. When they think mental health and marriage now, people think of me, right? And so they're thinking about that. Think about when you talk to others, what do they want to be helping you network with? There might be a job that they come about and they've thought of you because you had coffee with them before. So again, these were the top 10 tips I could think about on my journey over the last 15 years. And you may or may not have seen this before. This is called Ikigai. It's a Japanese model that comes up with a reason for being. And I love this. The idea is you're trying to find that middle spot. So you're trying to find something, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, what you're good at, and what you love. And you'll see where the concentric circles overlap. If you want to find this, just Google Ikigai and go to images, it will come up. But I love this also with the feelings involved, right? And it shows you what you're feeling in that time in your career. It's a great way that maybe you need to take a course correct. And you don't get to this right away when you get out of school, no, but you're on this journey to keep moving, keep learning, keep growing to get yourself to there. So implement the successful tips that we just talked about for that advancement, build your support team and mentors, and discover and work towards your Ikigai. Lastly, I'm just going to leave you with some resources and then we'll do Q&A. So with Mental Health Strong, this is for hope for marriages with mental health or addiction challenges. We have a book, we have a support group, we have resources. So if you know anybody in that situation, let them know about us to help give them that support in their relationships. And then other mental health resources. I encourage everyone to put the suicide prevention number in your phone. I have it there. You know, my husband has struggled with suicidal thoughts sometimes, and I need that number in order to work through that. Find your words. Someone had asked earlier about how do you find your words when no one's really talked about that. Go to that site. It has specific words to say. It also has an amazing support center that you can look at for different resources if you want to talk to somebody, either for yourself or your loved one. Mental health first aid is like the CPR for physical illness for mental health. It's a 8-hour class, really great in the community that you can take to learn more about mental health. The National Alliance for Mental Illness is NAMI, is a free resources for helping loved ones. So they have family to family classes and different support. They're also the largest organization that helps for advocacy in this space. And then Mental Health America is one of the great nonprofits that talks about mental illness in the United States. And then career resources, mentors, you know, identify someone you can look up to, ask them to be your mentor, you know, work with them, and then implement a new mentor. I get a new mentor probably every couple years. Strength Finders, I talked about that. It's $20 to take the test, and fantastic resource. And then if you want to do a more in depth of you're really struggling with like, what career should I do? How do I get to that ikigai? Career Direct, it's a couple $100. They give you a consultant and a test, but really good opportunity where it bumps your job or your personality, your strengths, and bumps it up against 80,000 jobs to tell you like what's the difference, where you should focus for your career versus a hobby. So really great resource. And in summary, I want to leave you with there's hope. Get help if you're struggling with mental health or your loved one. Pursue your ikigai and your career and work towards being mental health strong. So I'll leave you with this last video.
Hello?
We are here.
Oh, okay, Erin?
Yep.
Okay, great. I got a couple questions here.
Sure.
What tips do you have for supporting loved ones when you can't always see them in person, especially, you know, right now during COVID? And how can you best support them from afar?
Absolutely. It could be checking in with them with a phone call, a Zoom call. It could be sending them a note, sending them a text. If you don't have words to say, maybe you find a meme or, you know, a poem for them or just something to encourage them. You can say, I'm thinking about you. I'm here if you want to talk. I'm concerned about your health. You know, you can say any of those things, just something to show you care
Right.
and be
And
consistent.
also, I noticed that when you were talking about the ikigai
Mhm.
and also some of these career resources,
Yep.
that there are tests done in some of the colleges and universities in terms of finding out what you're, you know, they're like test, some kind of a testing that shows you what you like, what you're good at, and you know what you're strong at, kind of a
Absolutely.
tests.
Yeah.
And you don't really have to pay for those if you do them on campus, but I love what you had to say about a couple of the, like the strength finders was really good,
Hmm.
especially for young alum.
Yeah.
Uh, Also, someone else said, had a question here. Let me see if I can find it. You mentioned relapse 8 times. How do I get my girlfriend to understand and keep putting faith in me that I love her more and more every day?
Probably just share that. And if she's relapsing or he's relapsing, just let them know that you're here for them as they're relapsing.
And then when do you recognize something isn't right? How do you start? How do you get your hands around that and figure out what the next steps are? Um,
Yeah, it's, they talk about it in mental health first aid as, everyone is entitled to live, love, laugh, and play. So live, like have a job, love, have relationships, laugh, right? Have humor, and to play, do things they love. And so if something is impacting one of those four, that's where it's becoming a problem and you need to seek help.
so you talked about praying, and do you find that finding your spiritual side, because a lot of people don't have that. Um, how do you find what works for you? Because I know people are doing yoga, they're doing they're they're doing all
Yeah.
sorts of stuff. Yeah, like breathing, exercises.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, discover, research all the religions, discover what's truth, what's the evidence for them, discover what works, talk to people that you love and admire. For my husband, he was a Hindu, and he was a Hindu for 22 years and was involved in yoga and different things. And he became a Christian before he got married to me. But now he studies the evidence of the different religions. That's really important to him because he lost his entire family for his faith.
Wow.
So I think that, each person has to find their own journey, but to research it. And there's lots of tools out there to research different religions and define what is truth, and to seek that. I think we are made as spiritual beings, and I think that's innate in us. You hear of people who, they build their career up, they have all the money in the world, but yet there's something missing, right? And
Right.
I think the aspect is, that spiritual side, because we are spiritual beings.
And how do you balance a corporate and nonprofit role? What helps you keep the balance in life and in career?
Yeah, I'm actually taking off every other Monday. So I've worked at Kaiser Permanente long enough where I accrue 1 day of PTO every 2 weeks, which is just amazing. And so that's what I'm doing. So today was my take off from work day. So I was able to do this talk and work on other things for the nonprofit. So yeah, that's how I do that.
And then I noticed, this is a question for me. I
Yeah.
noticed that you created a COVID-19 social health playbook. I know we've got another 3 minutes left of your talk. So could you tell us a little bit about that? Is that we're all in the same boat right now?
And I'm not sure if you're so COVID-19. So what I did is I created a support group for spouses who are walking alongside their loved ones with COVID-19. So we started that 4 months ago, and we meet once a month and just as a peer support group. So we have that. And then I created YouTube videos with 1 to 3 minute topics that could come up in this time that people might be seeing with their loved ones. And so those are some of the things we've done with COVID-19.
Okay, great. Let me just throw these last two. So someone said they work for Dr. Phil, and he was really miserable. But we have to remind ourselves to have joy, smile, and even the smallest things.
Totally.
Which concurs with what you said. And then the last one was for those interested in pursuing mental health as a career track, what recommendations do you have to enter into that field? What qualities do you think are important to be successful in that field?
I think it's someone who wants to care for others. And you think about a therapist, right? That would be someone who's listening to someone's stories. So you can get involved that way. You can get involved, let's say you're in marketing and you want to help market in the mental health area. It can be many different ways. So to know what qualities I would say that you want to help people, that you have a caring and compassionate mind and you want to see there be change in this space. And then to how to get involved, you can obviously get into a program to start, getting the credentials and licensing for it. If you want to just do it on the side as like a hobby, like the grief recovery method. You could become a grief counselor. That's something you can get licensed to do. It doesn't take as much time. You could also be a mental health first aid instructor. For a couple $1,000s, you can get certified in a week and then start training courses on mental health. So there's definitely ways to get involved where it's like a full-time career versus something that you can do on the side and help people out. And so it just depends on where you want to go.
Great. Well, our time is up, and
Okay.
I'm gonna send you back to Noemi. But thank you so much, Erin, for your great presentation.
Thank you.
Noemi?
Erin, for sharing your story today and great notes. And thank you so much for sharing that slide. If people could contact you on LinkedIn to connect with you, would be great.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, you guys.
And thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate you joining us in the call today. And if you want to revisit the chat, it will be living on our website. And don't forget to follow us on our social media as TSUB alumni to learn about future programs like this. And thank you all again and have a great day.
Bye, you guys.
Erin. Bye.